Anaina ora iram di ira ya wete la aima irga yie ira enem eg Ælis ta ika. Welcome to the 23rd Ælis tutorial. It's been a while since the last video, so I felt like it was time to make a new one. I've been busy with a lot of things, among which also Ælis related ones. For starters, I've been working on a proper Ælis website, which contains all kinds of information ranging from tutorial-like sessions like this video series, but then in textbook style and with exercises, over explanations about how the language came to exist, to a complete overview of all the root words found in Ælis. You should definitely go check it out if you're interested. That is, if you're not using the website to view this video already. The link to the website is provided in the description of the YouTube video. Apart from the website, I've also been producing some music, which is another hobby of mine apart from conlanging. It seemed like a fun idea to bring both hobbies together and make a song with some lyrics in Ælis. That's exactly what I did, and that's what this video is also about. We'll simply analyze the lyrics and find out why they mean what they mean. If you haven't heard the song, here is an excerpt. A first thing to note is that since Ælis generally works with very few but very long words, it is nearly impossible to make poetry or song lyrics with proper rhyme per verse. Enter the enjambment, which is a stylistic figure where sentences or parts of speech do not seamlessly match the amount of verses, but instead run through and across them. Because intonation is free and the grammar allows it, the enjambment is extremely suitable to write Ælis poetry with. You can see the use reflected here. The first word alone spans 2 verses and a bit of the third, and the third word begins halfway the third verse and ends the fourth. Enjambments can even be applied to individual words. We can see this at the end of the second line, where the word aite, which means I or me, is split over 2 verses as well. To start analyzing the lyrics, let's write the text out in full first. There. And then we start with the first word, which is deolo yi ok ira vai eliana ira yi aite. This word has been translated as the winds, they complete me, they fill me with joy. This is a very loose translation, as is the rest of the text as well, by the way. Let's break this word up into roots. Done. The first root we encounter is deo. Deo actually means air and not wind. The word for wind would be deo oai ira an vai as, which would literally mean fast-moving air. This word, however, would be too long to fit the rhythm of the song, and deo alone suffices in this context. Ælis wouldn't be the first language to use air instead of wind. Look at the capital of Argentina, Buenos Aires, which literally means good air, but is to be interpreted as favorable winds, as a tribute by the Spanish explorers to the Virgin Maria for the favorable winds that brought them across the Atlantic safely. So there you have it. Deo, the winds. Next, we find the activity particle lo. If you recall video 19 of the series, you'll know that lo can be used to mark the preceding particles as having an agent-like function, and the following ones as an action. So, the winds do something. But what do they do? The next root word block is yi ok ira. Ok is a root word that means level of completion, level of fullness, or also progress. It is a word that can be complemented with qualifiers, so with the suffix ira, ok ira means complete or full. In front of it is the target particle, which can be used to express that the following word is the goal of something. And if the goal of a process is to be full or complete, then yi ok ira can be understood as a verb, to work towards completeness, or simply to complete or to fill. Next, we have the referent particle vai. It connects the preceding words to the next one. Those are el, a feeling, ea, abstract, nai, which means situation, and naira, which means good. In a previous video, we already explained how elea, an abstract feeling, is the Ælis word for emotion, and that nai naira simply means good situation. We've also discussed how an emotion about a good situation can be used in Ælis to express happiness or joy. So between the filling and the happiness, why do we use the referent particle vai? Why not simply use the characteristic particle m? Well, the reason is because m would cause the happiness to be an attribute of the filling, meaning that the act of filling or completing itself is feeling happy, and that is not the case. So we use vai instead. Note that the activity particle lo would also work, as you can interpret that the act of completing performs or causes happiness. However, lo would not rhyme with aite later on in the verse, so vai works just fine. At the end of the word, there is the target particle yi, followed by the first person pronoun aite. Yi connects me to happiness in a patient-like manner, meaning that it is me who is subjected to the feelings of happiness, therefore filling me with joy. If we bring it all together, deo lo yi ok ira vai eliana ira yi aite, winds that fill me with happiness. Note that there is no function marker before this word, so it is technically just a word and not a sentence. However, omission of function markers is sometimes allowed. I reckon it would be a good idea to cover this topic in one of the following videos. So, back to our text. After the word we have just covered, there is a separator marker, da, which splits the text into separate sentences at that point. The sentence after that is a big one, which we'll have to cover quite in detail. First, we'll highlight the amount of words, which is in fact only 2, as there are 2 function markers. There is a patient, marked with ia, and a topic, marked with ha. The sentence contains another patient and other 2 topics, however, those are located within a sentence bracket, meaning that they form part of a subclause and not the main clause. We can therefore disregard them for the time being. The topic of the main sentence is ei ara, which means stupidity or complete obliviousness. Note, however, that these words in English have a negative connotation, whereas the word ei ara has a neutral one. This is why the translation doesn't contain the word stupid, but rather no idea. And the argument subject to the lack of clue is the patient, aite. The next root word is a characteristic marker, m, which binds the following cluster to ei ara as an elaboration on it, and then there is our sentence bracket. Within the bracket, we have 3 new words, being a patient and 2 topics. The first topic is an li. An means place, and li means origin. Therefore, an li, origin place. The target of the origin place is deo, the winds. The second topic features aika an, which means one place, and again we find the target particle yi prefixed to it. Yi aika an means that the goal of a process is one place, and can therefore be understood to mean to bring to one place, or simply to bring together. Behind that is the referent marker vai, and after that we find the word ai ete. This personal pronoun is a contraction of aite, me, and ete, you. Ai ete therefore means us. So, yi aika an vai ai ete, bring us together. By the way, the fact that we are working with a patient rather than an agent means that the wind is passively involved in bringing us together. It is something that occurs to the wind rather than being done by it, invoking a notion of fate or destiny. And this makes for a little bit of extra poetry in the text. Now, the 3 words in the subclause are linked to the lack of knowledge over the sentence bracket and the characteristic particle. So there are 2 things that I don't know: where the winds come from, and whether they can bring you and me together. Only a small portion left. The last part of the sentence starts with a modifier marker, which means that the main sentence has 3 words: a patient, a topic, and a modifier. Irka oranai has been translated as "that's the way it is," which is also a very loose translation. The last root is nai, which we know by now means situation. By prefixing ka ora, it comes to mean all situations. And because this word is a modifier, we can understand it to mean in all situations or under any circumstance. So, the things we've described before are true under any circumstance, which means they cannot be changed, so that's the way it is. And that's all there is to know. There's deo, the winds, and they perform an act of filling or completing. The referent marker vai connects that to the next word, which is the happiness. I am the person feeling the happiness. The separator da starts a new sentence in which I have no idea. The characteristic marker m and the sentence bracket allow us to elaborate. Firstly, that I don't know where the winds come from. And secondly, I have no idea whether they can bring you and me together. And that is true under any circumstance. If you have any questions regarding Ælis or perhaps suggestions about topics you wish to have covered in following videos, do not hesitate to contact me. I welcome any feedback you have. Also, if you want to hear the full song of Deo, there is a link in the description, or you can find it on the Ælis website in the section called Art Collection. I hope you had fun with this slightly off-topic video on the Ælis language. Feel free to hit the subscribe button, share on social media, blah blah blah, you know the drill. Hanai na ora. We'll meet again soon.